First Contact Fiasco. Commander Julia Harrison stood at attention in the gleaming reception hall of the newly constructed International Space Diplomacy Center, trying not to fidget with her dress uniform. At her side, Scout, her 3-year-old golden retriever and certified therapy dog, sat perfectly still, living up to his extensive training. The morning sunlight streamed through the vast windows, casting rainbow patterns across the polished floor as Earth prepared to welcome its first official alien delegation. "Remember," Director Whitman whispered to the assembled greeting party, "the Velestians are a highly logical species. They value order, precision, and..." He trailed off as the distinctive hum of an alien shuttle approached. The massive doors slid open with a soft hiss, revealing Ambassador Naira of the Velestian Empire. The alien diplomat's crystalline skin caught the light, sending prismatic reflections dancing across the walls. Their multiple sensory appendages waved gently, taking in every detail of the room. Julia felt Scout's tail begin to wag beside her. Before she could tighten her grip on his leash, the therapy dog did what he'd been trained to do when meeting new people. He stood up, tail wagging enthusiastically, and let out a friendly woof of greeting. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. Ambassador Naira's crystalline form flashed brilliant red, their sensory appendages whipping back in what Julia would later learn was pure terror. The entire Velestian delegation recoiled, their forms shifting through various shades of alarm. "You dare bring a combat beast to a diplomatic reception?" Naira's translator crackled with indignation and fear. "Those teeth! Those predatory eyes! This is an outrage!" Julia's attempt to explain was drowned out by the chaos that erupted. Scout, completely oblivious to the diplomatic crisis he'd just caused, sat back down and tilted his head in confusion, his tail still wagging optimistically. "Ambassador, please," Director Whitman stepped forward, hands raised in a universal gesture of peace. "There's been a misunderstanding. Scout is a therapy dog, a companion animal." "Companion?" Naira's translator struggled with the concept. "You willingly associate with such creatures. Those jaws could crush crystalline forms. Those claws could shred molecular bonds. And you claim to keep them as companions?" Scout chose that moment to lie down and roll onto his back, paws in the air, hoping for a belly rub. Several junior Velestian diplomats edged closer, their colors shifting from alarm red to a more curious violet. "Fascinating," one of them murmured. "The beast appears to be displaying submission behavior, yet humans claim it as an ally." Julia saw her chance. "Ambassador Naira, if you'll allow me to demonstrate." She knelt beside Scout, who immediately sat up and gently placed his paw in her outstretched hand, just as they'd practiced countless times. The assembled Velestians went completely still, their colors cycling through a range of hues Julia couldn't begin to interpret. Ambassador Naira's voice, when it came through the translator, held a note of horrified fascination. "You train these predators to obey complex commands? To integrate into your society? The implications are disturbing." Naira turned to their aides. "Document everything. The Galactic Council must be informed immediately. Any species capable of domesticating such creatures." "No, you don't understand," Julia tried again, but Scout had spotted something out the window, probably a squirrel, and let out another cheerful bark. The Velestian delegation retreated another step. Director Whitman pinched the bridge of his nose. Somewhere in the back of the reception hall, Julia heard what sounded suspiciously like a hastily stifled laugh. This was definitely not how humanity had imagined their first official contact with an advanced alien civilization would go. Scout, still completely unaware of his role in potentially derailing interstellar diplomacy, leaned against Julia's leg and gazed up at the aliens with his trademark golden retriever smile, tail sweeping a steady rhythm against the floor. The first day of Earth's new era of galactic diplomacy was about to become very interesting indeed. Diplomatic chaos. The emergency United Nations session that followed could only be described as controlled chaos. Cultural attaché Ravi Patel stood at the podium, surrounded by holographic displays showing dogs in various roles throughout human history: guide dogs leading the blind, rescue dogs saving lives, police dogs protecting communities. Above him, the Valestian delegation hovered in their anti-gravity pods, their crystalline forms still flickering with agitation. "Distinguished representatives," Ravi began, his voice steady despite the tension in the room, "what you perceive as weapons are, in fact, humanity's oldest and most trusted allies. Dogs have evolved alongside us for over 15,000 years. 15,000 years. Ambassador Naira's translator crackled. "You've been engineering these creatures for 15 millennia. Not engineering," Ravi corrected gently. "Co-evolving. A natural partnership based on mutual trust and affection." The Valestian delegation's colors shifted to a deep purple, confusion, Ravi had learned. In the gallery, Commander Harrison sat with Scout at her feet, both under intense scrutiny from the alien observers. "Demonstrate," Ambassador Naira demanded suddenly. "Show us this partnership." Julia stood, Scout moving smoothly with her. The Golden Retriever's training kicked in immediately, his posture alert but calm. The assembled diplomats leaned forward as Julia ran through basic commands: sit, stay, lie down. Scout performed each one perfectly, his tail wagging gently. "These are basic behavioral controls," one of the Valestian scientists noted. "But what of the creature's natural aggression? Its predatory instincts?" Julia reached into her pocket and pulled out Scout's favorite tennis ball. The reaction was immediate. Scout's tail began wagging faster, his eyes locked on the bright yellow sphere. The Valestian delegates rippled with alarm at this display of focused intensity. "Watch," Julia said softly, and tossed the ball. Scout bounded after it, his movement fluid and joyful. Several alien diplomats flinched, their crystalline forms flashing warning colors. But when Scout returned, gently placing the ball in Julia's hand and sitting expectantly, the atmosphere in the chamber shifted subtly. "The beast plays." A junior Valestian analyst drifted closer, their color shifting to a curious blue-green. "This is not hunting behavior. This is companionship," Ravi explained. "Joy, trust, and mutual understanding." From the gallery, other human diplomats began sharing their own stories. Ambassador Chen spoke of the therapy dog that helped her daughter overcome anxiety. Representative Singh described how search and rescue dogs had saved thousands after a devastating earthquake. The Valestian delegation's colors cycled through a range of hues as they processed this information. Ambassador Naira drifted lower in their pod, appendages waving in what might have been thoughtful consideration. "And these creatures, these dogs, they serve willingly. Without coercion or neural manipulation. The only manipulation involved is love," Julia said, scratching Scout behind the ears. "And usually quite a few treats." As if on cue, Scout's ears perked up at the word treats. Several of the human diplomats chuckled, and even some of the alien observers' colors flickered in what might have been amusement. "We request." Ambassador Naira paused, their crystalline form shimmering with uncertainty. "We request permission to study this phenomenon. The implications for interspecies cooperation are significant." Ravi exchanged glances with Julia. This was an unexpected opportunity, not just to explain dogs to their alien visitors, but to demonstrate humanity's capacity for forming bonds beyond species boundaries. "Of course," Ravi agreed. "Though I should warn you, once you get to know them, dogs have a way of winning you over." Scout wagged his tail, and somewhere in the chamber, a Valestian analyst's colors shifted to a warm, curious gold. The diplomatic crisis wasn't over, but perhaps they were on the path to understanding. Little did they know that Scout's impromptu tennis ball demonstration would soon spark an interstellar revolution in the way alien species viewed companionship, and humanity's place in the galaxy. Understanding through play. Junior scientist ZYX had never imagined their first Earth assignment would involve studying what the humans called dogs. Their crystalline form shimmered with nervous energy as they set up monitoring equipment in the designated research area, a spacious green field that the humans called a park. "Remember," Commander Harrison explained, holding Scout's leash, "he can sense anxiety. Try to relax." ZYX's colors shifted to a skeptical purple. Relax? In the presence of a predator? Their research equipment hummed, recording every movement as Scout sat calmly, watching a butterfly flutter past. "Fascinating," ZYX murmured, noting how the creature's attention shifted without any signs of aggression. "The neural pathways must be extensively modified to suppress hunting instincts." Julia smiled. "Nothing suppressed. He just doesn't want to hunt. Watch this." She unclipped Scout's leash. ZYX's form flashed alarm red, their sensory appendages pulling tight against their body. But Scout merely stretched, then flopped onto his back in the grass, rolling with obvious pleasure. "The creature appears to be malfunctioning," ZYX ventured. "He's happy," Julia laughed. "This is play behavior. Dogs do it naturally." The concept of play had been particularly challenging for the Valestian research team to grasp. Their species valued efficiency above all else. The idea of expending energy for no practical purpose seemed nonsensical. ZYX drifted closer, their scientific curiosity gradually overcoming their instinctive fear. Scout rolled back onto his feet, shaking grass from his fur, and gave ZYX what the humans called a doggy smile. The facial expression, ZYX noted, it indicates friendliness, Julia supplied. "He wants to play with you." "With me?" ZYX's colors cycled rapidly through shades of surprise and uncertainty. "But I am not human. I am not even carbon-based. Dogs don't care about that. Here." Julia handed ZYX a tennis ball. "Throw it." ZYX examined the ball with their sensory appendages, logging its composition and weight for their research. Scout's tail began wagging faster, his eyes fixed on the ball with eager anticipation. "The specimen appears agitated," ZYX observed worriedly. "Excited," Julia corrected. "Go on, throw it." With careful precision, ZYX levitated the ball with their electromagnetic field and launched it across the park. What happened next would be recorded in their research logs as Observation 47, First Direct Interaction. Scout exploded into motion, racing after the ball with unbridled joy. ZYX's instruments went wild, recording the dog's speed, agility, and the complex neural patterns that indicated happiness. The readings made no logical sense, yet they couldn't be denied. When Scout returned, dropping the ball at ZYX's feet and looking up expectantly, something extraordinary happened. Without consulting their research protocols or waiting for authorization, ZYX picked up the ball and threw it again. Scout bounded after it, and ZYX felt their crystalline form warm with an unfamiliar sensation. "Was this enjoyment?" "Your research subject appears to be affecting my emotional stability," ZYX reported, throwing the ball a third time. Julia grinned. "That's the magic of dogs. They have a way of getting past our defenses." Over the next few hours, ZYX's research notes became increasingly less clinical. "Specimen demonstrates remarkable problem-solving abilities in treat acquisition scenarios. Physical contact, petting, produces unexpected positive feedback in both species. Tennis ball throwing exercises continued for 47 repetitions. Further study required." By sunset, ZYX's form had settled into a warm, golden glow, a color of contentment rarely seen in their species. As they packed up their equipment, Scout pressed his nose against their crystalline surface in what Julia called a goodbye boop. "Most irregular," ZYX murmured, but their colors flickered with pleasure. That evening, ZYX's preliminary report to the Valestian Science Council contained an unprecedented recommendation: immediate expansion of canine interaction studies. These creatures possess qualities that transcend known parameters of interspecies relationships. Also, request additional tennis balls for research purposes. The Intergalactic Dog Park. The newly established Interspecies Canine Relations Center sparkled under Earth's autumn sun. What had started as a simple embassy garden had transformed into something unprecedented, the galaxy's first multi-species dog park. Commander Harrison stood at its entrance, Scout by her side, watching as beings from a dozen different worlds interacted with Earth's four-legged ambassadors. Most fascinating, rumbled Ambassador Tlocks of the Meridian Collective, their gelatinous form undulating as they watched a border collie navigate an agility course. These beings comprehend abstract commands across species barriers. Nearby, a group of Arcturian floating orbs hovered in formation, completely entranced by a game of frisbee. Their traditional purple meditation auras had shifted to excited pink as they tracked the disk's trajectory. The transformation has been remarkable, Ravi noted, joining Julia at the observation point. 6 months ago, the Valestians thought dogs were weapons of war. Now look. In the center of the park, ZYX, now the leading xenobiologist in canine studies, was conducting what they insisted was a serious scientific investigation into the optimal belly-rubbing technique. Their crystalline form glowed with warm, happy colors as 3 different dogs competed for their attention. Initial fear response decreasing by 47% across all visiting species, ZYX reported without looking up, their sensory appendages gently scratching behind a golden retriever's ears. Positive interaction metrics exceeding all projected models. The success of the program had caught everyone by surprise. What began as a Valestian research project had quickly attracted attention from other spacefaring races. Dogs, it seemed, had a universal appeal that transcended biology. The Andromedans have submitted a formal request, Ravi mentioned, checking his tablet. They want to establish a permanent canine embassy in their capital system. Julia raised an eyebrow. The same Andromedans who wouldn't make eye contact during first contact because they considered it a sign of aggression? The very same. Apparently, they've developed a particular fondness for pugs. Something about their facial expressions being cosmically harmonious. A commotion near the water bowls drew their attention. A Syrian quantum consciousness, traditionally known for its aloofness, was experiencing its first encounter with a St. Bernard's drool. Rather than recoiling, its energy patterns were shifting into what Julia recognized as expressions of delight. Who would have thought, Julia mused, that humanity's greatest contribution to galactic society would be teaching aliens how to play fetch? The observation deck's door whispered open, admitting Ambassador Naira. The Valestian diplomat's crystalline form had long since lost its fearful red tones when around dogs, now typically displaying a calm blue sheen. Commander Harrison, Naira's translator hummed. The Galactic Council has reached a decision regarding Earth's petition. Julia straightened, feeling her heart rate quicken. The petition, proposing Earth as a center for interspecies emotional intelligence studies, had been controversial. Many older spacefaring races had scoffed at the idea of humans teaching anything about emotional development. Your species, Naira continued, has demonstrated an extraordinary capacity for forming meaningful bonds across biological barriers. The Council believes this perspective could be valuable. Does this mean? Ravi began. Earth is to be designated as the galactic hub for interspecies companionship studies, Naira confirmed. Though some Council members still express concern about your methods. As if on cue, Scout chose that moment to trot over with his favorite tennis ball, dropping it at Naira's feet. The ambassador's colors flickered briefly with what Julia now recognized as amusement. Case in point, Naira said, using their electromagnetic field to lift the ball. Your species has somehow convinced the most sophisticated minds in the galaxy to throw small spherical objects for their own entertainment. Not convinced, Julia corrected with a smile. Invited. There's a difference. Naira launched the ball with perfect form, they'd had plenty of practice by now. Scout bounded after it, his joy as pure and infectious as ever. Around the park, beings of all shapes, sizes, and chemical compositions paused to watch, their various sensory organs tracking the simple game with unmistakable warmth. A new kind of alliance. 1 year after the infamous First Contact fiasco, the Galactic Hub for Interspecies Companionship Studies was hosting its first graduation ceremony. Julia stood on the stage, Scout sitting proudly beside her, as they prepared to certify the first class of alien therapy dog handlers. The assembly hall was filled with beings from across the galaxy. In the front row, ZYX's crystalline form glowed with pride next to their canine partner, a gentle German shepherd named Luna. The once fearful scientist had become one of the program's most passionate advocates. When humanity joined the galactic community, Julia began her address. We expected to share our technology, our sciences, our arts. We never imagined our most valuable contribution would be teaching the galaxy how to love unconditionally. In the audience, a young Arcturian sphere pulsed with agreement, their therapy Labrador's tail thumping steadily against the floor. Nearby, a Meridian healer's tentacles were gently intertwined with their corgi partner's fur, a sight that would have been unthinkable just months ago. The species we once feared as predators, Ambassador Naira added, floating onto the stage, has become our greatest teachers in emotional intelligence. The Valestian Empire has recorded a 73% increase in positive diplomatic outcomes since introducing canine companions to our embassies. This was an understatement. The presence of dogs had revolutionized interstellar relations. Diplomatic tensions that had persisted for centuries began to ease as species learned to interact with dogs, and by extension, with each other, with openness and empathy. Perhaps most remarkably, Ravi contributed from his seat on the stage. We've seen the emergence of what we're calling the ripple effect. Species that learn to bond with dogs are demonstrating increased capacity for forming meaningful connections with other species as well. The evidence was all around them. In one corner, a Syrian quantum consciousness was teaching a Meridian blob how to play tug-of-war. Near the refreshment area, a group of Andromedans were excitedly sharing dog photos with their Valestian colleagues. Today's graduates, Julia continued, represent more than just successful training completion. They represent a fundamental shift in how sentient beings relate to one another. Scout chose this moment to roll over for a belly rub, drawing chuckles from the assembled dignitaries. Even the most serious council members had learned to appreciate what they called spontaneous canine emotional demonstrations. As the certificates were awarded, each graduate approached the stage with their canine partner. ZYX, now officially a senior researcher in Xenocanine relations, gave their speech entirely in Earth Standard, having learned the language to better understand dog commands, though everyone knew it was really because they'd become addicted to watching dog training videos. Our research continues to reveal new aspects of these relationships, ZYX reported, Luna sitting attentively at their side. But perhaps the most significant finding is the simplest: love, trust, and friendship transcend all biological barriers. We just needed the right teachers to show us how. After the ceremony, in the embassy gardens, Julia watched as beings from 100 worlds mingled freely, their various dogs facilitating conversations and connections that once seemed impossible. Scout lay at her feet, gray around the muzzle now but still wagging his tail at every passing alien. You know, Naira said, their crystalline form shimmering with what Julia had learned to recognize as contentment. When I first arrived on Earth, I thought your species was dangerously irrational for partnering with predators. And now? Julia asked, scratching Scout behind the ears. Now I understand that the true irrationality lies in fearing connection simply because it comes in an unexpected form. Naira's colors shifted to a warm, reflective gold. Your dogs have taught us that the universe is far richer when we open ourselves to new kinds of bonds. As if to emphasize the point, a puppy from the newest training class went bounding past, followed by an enthusiastic group of alien trainees, all calling out encouragement in their various languages. The galaxy will never be the same, Ravi observed, joining them. No, Julia agreed, watching Scout doze peacefully in the midst of the interstellar gathering he had helped create. And that's exactly what it needed. In the years that followed, historians would note that humanity's integration into galactic society was uniquely smooth compared to other emerging civilizations. The secret, they would observe, wasn't in humanity's technology or their diplomatic skills, but in the four-legged ambassadors who taught the galaxy that sometimes the strongest bonds are formed over a simple game of fetch. And somewhere in the vast archives of the Valestian Empire, there remains a footnote to that first contact report: caution, Earth's dogs are indeed dangerous, they will steal your heart when you least expect it.